A radio show host in Seattle called Paul Gallant.
You are definitely living in the hindsight world today, Paul.
Do you feel there's been a consistent theme with the interceptions?
I think every interception really has a different story.
I was just kind of curious what Paul gets to see.
You got grow up, mother. Are you kidding me?
Paul Gallant, what the hell is wrong with you?
Hello and welcome aboard to another episode of the Gallant Says podcast, available live, twitch.tv/Gallant Says, youtube.com/Paul Gallant, also available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. It is Monday, February 6th of 2023. The build up to Super Bowl 57 has begun. Those others on our Twitch chat are more excited about new South Park and Beavis and Butthead episodes. Gotta say, Dick Willie at twitchtv.com/Gallant Says, I don't think I'm as excited about new South Parks the way that I used to growing up. South Park did form a lot of my sense of humor. They've had some good episodes recently, but I don't love it the same way I used to. Maybe that's part of growing up. It's hard to be a show and consistently be funny, especially if you're animated, whether you're The Simpsons or Family Guy or South Park, all throughout the show's history. I mean, shit, they came out, I think South Park started in the late 90s. Simpsons have been going on since, I want to say, the late 80s. Family Guy's been going on since the early 2000s. Those shows have been out for a really long time. You're going a little bit too deep with it, though. Like calling the crypto collapse. I mean, anyone could have called out the crypto collapse. I don't think they're geniuses, but I do love them. I do love Trey Parker and Matt Stone. So since Super Bowl week is upon us, that means that you are going to get bludgeoned to death with some Super Bowl storylines. Did you know that both Jason Kelce and Travis Kelce are brothers? Did you know that Nick Sirianni used to be a coach with the Kansas City Chiefs for Andy Reid? Did you know that Andy Reid used to be the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles? But that's where I want to start. I threw this question out. You can answer it at Gallant Says Pod or at Gallant Says on Twitter, or you can, of course, contribute it to our chat, whether you're doing it at twitch.tv/Gallant Says or youtube.com/Paul Gallant. Tell me about a player or a coach that you didn't appreciate enough while they were with your favorite team. Because the Philadelphia Eagles and their fan base did not nearly appreciate Andy Reid as much as they needed to. Life and Sports Talk with Jake on youtube.com/Paul Gallant comments. Curious to why Andy Reid couldn't make it work with McNabb, LaShawn McCoy, Deshaun Jackson, but Mahomes is doing it with just Kelce and Andy Reid. Because Patrick Mahomes is way better than Donovan McNabb. Patrick Mahomes is one of the best quarterbacks ever. But those Eagles teams were fucking great in the time that he was there. Andy Reid took over the Philadelphia Eagles in 1999. 1998, they were 3-13, moved on from Ray Rhodes. They wanted to get Mike Holmgren. Mike Holmgren decided to coach the Seattle Seahawks, so they went after Andy Reid. Andy Reid, at the time, was the Green Bay Packers quarterback coach, their assistant head coach, as part of a Mike Holmgren coaching staff that had a lot of guys who you've seen coaching across the league over the last couple of years. So Reid comes in 1999. He was the second youngest head coach in the league after John Gruden. That's pretty crazy to think about. That was 20 plus years ago. So Andy Reid was just a little bit older than 40. So they get Donovan McNabb. 1998, they go 5-11. They won their first road game in 19 games. And in 2000, they were 11-5. They beat the Bucks in a playoff game. It was their first playoff win and first playoff game that they had played since 1995. He comes in and starts a stretch where the Eagles just dominate by their standards. 2001 through 2004, the Eagles would win 4 straight NFC East titles during the time where we thought the NFC East was the best division in the NFL. It was the longest streak in franchise history. They made it to the conference championship game in 2001, 2002, 2003, and 2004. They lost the first 3, but they got to the NFC championship game, which is something that the Eagles, who have largely had a shitty history, were not able to do. 2005, after the Eagles make it to the Super Bowl, Terrell Owens kind of submarined the entire thing. Reid deactivates him permanently midway through the 2005 season. McNabb gets hurt. The Eagles finish 6-10 after losing 8 of their last 10, but they move on. And Reid, despite Donovan McNabb slowly becoming a worse and worse quarterback, and despite not a lot of talent around him, somehow Andy Reid made it work. I mean, there was a year where Michael Vick gets brought in 2010, and the Eagles go 11-5. And you're like, wait a second, how the hell did they do this? Check that, 10-6. They made the playoffs. Like, he did a really good job in Philly, and yet all I remember, partially from my stepdad, who is a diehard Eagles fan, but other people that follow the Eagles, was that this guy wasn't good enough. And I suppose that there was a strong argument to be made that maybe Andy Reid wasn't great with clock management. We saw that, obviously, in the Super Bowl. There's some other times that I think maybe Eagles fans had valid gripes, but small complaints with Andy Reid. But there was this, for a while, only a couple of years after Andy Reid had left, idea that he had never been a good coach in Philadelphia. And you heard it a lot from Philadelphia sports talking heads. I remember going to a broadcasting camp in Philadelphia during the summer after Terrell Owens had essentially quit on the team and forced his way out of town. And I remember like a couple of the Philadelphia media folks who were running this broadcasting camp that I went to kept on bringing up that like Andy Reid wasn't that good. And I thought to myself, okay, now I'm a Patriots fan and obviously I know ball and maybe you guys don't, but Reid's pretty damn good and he's better than anything you had before. The Eagles have had a pretty bad history from the 1960s going all the way through when Andy Reid took over in 1999. Like, yeah, they had the one Super Bowl run with Dick Vermeil in the 80s. I think they lost to the Oakland Raiders. I want to say that was the 1980-1981 season. Off the top of my head, I don't remember. But this is a team that did not have any history before Reid comes in. And it's going to be interesting to see the way that people treat Reid this week because there will be a lot of people that praise Reid's time with Philadelphia. And they're probably really thankful in Philadelphia that things have worked out so great post Andy Reid. Doug Peterson got the team to a Super Bowl. They won it. Nick Sirianni's already gotten the team back to a Super Bowl. So it's not to say like, oh, the Eagles are fucking idiots for moving on from Andy Reid. No, I think eventually that ran its course. It wasn't going to get any better. But I just think Philadelphians with McNabb to a lesser extent, because I think it's valid in some circumstances, and Andy Reid get shit on by Philadelphians in a way that makes me wonder like just how much they actually know football. He was a damn good coach for you. And he wins the Super Bowl with Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes. And a lot of the rhetoric anti-Andy Reid in Philadelphia, it settled down. Like people were acting as if they actually liked Andy Reid all the time, which was bullshit. Eventually, they got sick and tired of him and smeared him on the way out the door as if he hadn't really done anything. But, I mean, he made it to a Super Bowl with Donovan fucking McNabb under center. You know? Let's read some comments here. YouTube.com/Paul Gallant or Twitch.tv/Gallant says, Dick Willie says, they were mean to Andy. Andy's a nice guy, too. That's the other weird part about it. Zach the Texan says, Philly radio will be entertaining if Reid and Mahomes win it all. Yeah, I would think so. I do think I am leaning towards Philadelphia in this game because Philadelphia sports fans to me are a lot more tolerable than Kansas City and Midwestern sports fans. No offense. I feel like they're honest, they're authentic, and I think there's this Midwestern hospitality bullshit that those in the Midwest like to rub in your face a lot. Cardinals fans are the best fans ever. Oh, sure, okay. Great. Chiefs fans, you're the best. Wow, you're so loud. You know, There's a lot of, I think, patting themselves on the back that goes on with Midwestern sports fans. Oh, we don't curse our players out. Oh, we don't act like Andy Reid's tenure in Philadelphia sucked. Because it didn't. You're so much better than us. There's a sanctimony with it. I don't like it. Life and Sports Talk with Jake says, I feel like that's how Seattle fans are going to be with Pete Carroll. They won't appreciate him till he's gone. No, I think that changed. It could have been that way. And I remember while in Seattle regularly saying this, look, guys, he's a good coach. You got to find the replacement for Pete Carroll. And as I was on my way out, I just remember so many of the insufferable nerd analytics only fans that follow that team. There are a lot of people that thought that Pete Carroll was the problem, like he was holding Russell Wilson back with their simplistic view of football that you should be passing more, the one that overlooks the idea that you want to actually make it so that offensive linemen over the course of a game have an opportunity to wear down the defense. That's the whole point of, establishing the run. People get pissed off when they hear it because it does sound stupid at face value. But the reason that people will call for running plays at times is so that they have their offensive linemen on the attack against the defensive line as opposed to constantly backpedaling. If you're constantly backpedaling and trying to stave off a pass rush all game long, you make it really easy for that pass rush, and you're going to get worn out a lot more quickly. You got to have a little bit of push going the other direction. And people acted like the way that the Seahawks ran, where it was a very complementary offense with a lot of running, but a lot of play action fakes that set Russell Wilson up for some of the great throws that he's able to make downfield. And there was an annoyance with this coaching style. And, as someone who was coming in from Houston and having seen some pretty shitty situations over my tenure here, I just never understood why that mentality existed and was as loud and pervasive as it was. There were a lot of people out there who thought Pete Carroll sucked. And I do think we get to this phase with coaches because of Bill Belichick getting, with Tom Brady and the Patriots, getting to 9 Super Bowls over that 20-year stretch and winning 6 of them. Other coaches who actually had successful teams, consistent teams that weren't able to win a Super Bowl, we started to look at them with a little bit of a side eye. Let's say Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh was one that maybe I was a little bit unfair towards because Mike Tomlin, I always thought to myself, well, he's got Ben Roethlisberger. To go back to that comment earlier with Donovan McNabb and LaShawn McCoy and Deshaun Jackson, I always thought, having a bit of a brain fart here. Tomlin with Ben Roethlisberger, with Antonio Brown, and with Le'Veon Bell, I always thought, okay, they should have won something. And it always was funny to watch the Steelers play the Patriots and how one-sided those games generally went. Maybe that was something to hold against Mike Tomlin. But that team's been really consistent for years and years and years, including when at the very end they had the just giant gas bag of Ben Roethlisberger left as the guy under center. And also, you could take a look, too, at other guys that, hung around for a while. Maybe they aren't as bad as we made them out to be. Mike McCarthy's not a coach that I would really want to have, especially if I'm the Cowboys. And I would probably want to go with a younger guy, a little bit more exciting candidate. But Mike McCarthy's done a pretty good job since he has joined Dallas. The playoff wins just haven't happened. But I want to know, people that you feel you didn't appreciate while they were coaching or playing for your favorite team. One that Patriot fans will bring up a ton was Dante Scarnecchia, who was the Patriots offensive line coach. He was the coach there for years, left for a couple, and when he left, the offensive line fell off a cliff, and they brought him back immediately. I feel like that was a coach that, for the team that I root for, that maybe didn't appreciate him as much as they needed to, but then they brought him back in, and the guy's essentially got his own wing, it seems like, in the Patriots. I don't know if it's in the Patriots Pro Football Hall of Fame, but there is definitely some deep Scarnecchia appreciation there. As far as other guys who maybe we should have appreciated a little bit more while they were here, Mike D'Antoni is head coach of the Rockets. D'Antoni unlocked a level of James Harden as a distributor and as a scorer that I don't know he would have reached if not for D'Antoni. And I know a lot of people out there are big Harden stans. I am not one. I don't enjoy watching him play. But whatever. He found a way to play very well in the NBA and take advantage of some of the things that were being called fouls-wise and, you know, the gather step, the Euro step, all that shit. Harden did a really good job with all of that. But I don't know that he would have been able to get to that point without Mike D'Antoni. And it was really weird that Mike D'Antoni and Chris Paul and Dwight Howard, these are three guys that, while James Harden was here in Houston, were often blamed as the reason that Harden wasn't able to get over the hump. And now in reality, it's just like, well, we know what James Harden is. We know what James Harden has always been. Life and Sports Talk with Jake asks this question. We did talk about the trade a little bit on Friday. It happened right after the start of the show. How is this Kyrie and Luka going to work? It's a great question. I honestly don't know. I saw a tweet a little bit earlier that listed all the potential destinations for Kyrie Irving. There was the Los Angeles Lakers, 2 first-round picks the Lakers would have sent to get Kyrie Irving with the Lakers to go play with LeBron again. You had the Phoenix Suns, who also offered a package. And then you got what Dallas actually offered, and it's not like they offered that much. And it does feel as if Joseph Tsai, the owner of the Brooklyn Nets, was being spiteful, was being hateful towards Kyrie Irving, and it's like, yeah, I'm not going to trade you to a good team. Even though the Lakers offered more, even though the Suns, I think, offered a little bit more. So he goes to Dallas. What Brooklyn gets is a 2029 unprotected first, 2 second-round picks, Spencer Dinwiddie, who I believe was on the Nets not too long ago, and Dorian Finney-Smith. Dallas gets Kyrie Irving and Markieff Morris. It's not a great trade, I feel like, for Brooklyn. They could have probably gotten more. And I don't think this is going to work between Kyrie and Luka. Luka strikes me as someone who does not tolerate bullshit. It's an outside looking in kind of impression. But how much can Kyrie keep his mouth shut? How much can Kyrie essentially shut up and dribble? Because I think he has to do that to start to earn perhaps the trust and the faith of players across the league back. It seems like he's kind of burnt a lot of that goodwill that he once had in his favor. I don't think this is going to work out. I really don't. I think it's only a matter of time before Kyrie Irving potentially even quits on the Dallas Mavericks. And if you're Luka, like, why would you want this? It's a bad move by Dallas. And I don't know that Kyrie's going to pull a Rajon Rondo or something like that. But, yeah, I just don't like this one. Anyway, guys, that's going to wrap up a pretty quick edition of today's Gallant Says podcast. I'm not going to lie. I'm rather distracted because, once again, I got people across the hall that are doing some construction as I work. We're going to try to work on that problem, see if I can figure out a way to dampen the banging. It's been a couple of weeks of this construction. They're basically just tearing apart the condo that's right across the street from me. But anyway, appreciate everybody who tunes in. Gallant Says podcast is on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. You can get it live, twitch.tv/Gallant Says or youtube.com/Paul Gallant every weekday around 1 to 1:30. For everyone who tuned in, so long, farewell, and have yourselves a wonderful Monday. We'll be back at it tomorrow.